Hi, and welcome to Between the Rows. My name's Dave, and I'll be your host this week. It's the week after Canola Week, so it seems only logical, well, to me anyway, that we're talking about canola today. Of course, that's got to include a report from the Canola Week Industry Conference up in Saskatoon.
Basically, there's a lot of opportunity for expansion of acres or for creating new varieties of canola with an additional oil content.
And it's been a weird couple of weeks for canola on the ICE futures market, so we'll try and sort out what's going on there.
What goes up must come down, and what goes down must bounce back up. I suppose the adage held true in this case.
That's what's up on Between the Rows, right after this.
Save money, make money with AGI Nico dryers. AGI Nico mixed flow screenless dryers provide 1 to 2 pounds heavier test weight per bushel and require less maintenance than screen dryers. Stainless steel fuel trains mean no rust or corrosion to worry about. AGI Nico Dryer Manager puts remote management and monitoring in your hands. And with 30% in fuel savings, you'll save on every load. That's money in your pocket. Visit aggrowth.com/Nico for more info. That's aggrowth.com/Nico.
So this past week saw the return of Canola Week, which is sort of a confederation of what used to be 3 separate events: the Canola Industry Meeting, Canola Innovation Day, and Canola Discovery Forum. As the names of all those events imply, the broader focus of Canola Week is on innovation and research and keeping everyone's eyes on the segments of greatest opportunity for canola. And into all this went Alexis Kinlan. She's a reporter for Alberta Farmer Express out of Edmonton. She's back from Canola Week in Saskatoon, and she joins us now. Alexis, hi, and welcome back to Between the Rows.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, may I just say I'm dying of jealousy over here. Saskatoon, in my opinion, is a lovely city. Every time I'm back in that part of the mother province, I never get to spend as much time as I'd like in Saskatoon, or, well, I mean, any of the places I go in Saskatchewan. I never get to spend all the time I'd like, really. But seeing as I'm still, spending most of my working days in cyberspace, I've got to ask, what's it like out in the real world?
Well, it was really nice. This was my first convention since conferences got shut down in March 2020 when I attended the Canadian Crops Convention in Vancouver. That was my last conference. And so it was really lovely to go to Canola Week in Saskatoon in my hometown. There was about 150 people in attendance. Attendance was capped. There was a virtual segment so people could watch in, and there was also virtual presentations. So they played videos from speakers all over the world. One was in Australia, one was in Germany. There was just a number of people presenting from all over. So it was a kind of really nice taste. And I think that there's going to be in some forums, maybe not all conferences, but I think we're going to continue to see some kind of hybrid conferences and virtual and non-virtual going forward.
Mm-hmm. I got to admit, I did wonder, whether where people were offering the virtual option to attend an actual physical conference, whether people were just going to not buy tickets, not bother to travel, and would just, sort of stay home and observe in their sweatpants.
I think there was a bit of that, but I think people were also wanting to gather and see each other, especially since it's been a while now.
Mm-hmm. So with the conference now, with sustainability being sort of the operant word at least the biggest buzzword, I think, in agriculture these days, not to mention in other sectors as well. That seems to be what informed a lot of the topics that they had on tap for Canola Week. I mean, from where you sit, was that a fair assessment?
I would say definitely. There was a lot of talk about research and development. There was also a lot of talk about precision agriculture. There was panels focused directly on climate change, and one of my favorites was how crops will react to climate change. And then there was some panels on a big panel on biodiesel, renewable diesel kind of thing. So yeah, I would say sustainability was definitely on the minds and in the focus of this conference for sure.
What can you tell us about developments in renewable diesel? Now you got to keep in mind here though that personally, I'm still at the stage where I'm getting renewable diesel and biodiesel confused. So please proceed on that basis.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you the definition from what I learned from Christopher Vett. He's the executive director of the Canadian Oilseeds Processors Association.
Okay.
And he said that biodiesel is produced by blending fuels. So there's limitations to how much biodiesel can be blended with how much fossil diesel, whereas renewable diesel uses a process that essentially produces a product at the end that is chemically identifiable to fossil diesel, and that you can use it interchangeably with fossil diesel. So I guess there's like one is biodiesel is blended and renewable is just kind of transformed.
So it's been interesting to see what our colleagues over at Markets Farm have been reporting lately on the rises and falls in canola and soybean futures, and that they seem to be getting sort of more and more tied up with those of crude oil. I mean, it used to be that you'd hear about that with corn and ethanol and whatnot, but nowadays with canola and soy as well. What was sort of the buzz about renewable diesel there? I mean, I know there's been discussion, Imperial Oil talking about building a renewable diesel plant not far from where you are, actually, in Edmonton there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is going to be a facility in Strathcona County. And then there's going to be, you can really see that there's a lot of interest by how many facilities are going to pop up. There's going to be an FCL facility in Saskatchewan, I think near Regina. And then another facility in southeastern Saskatchewan. And then we've got a facility coming on at Prince George, and another one in Burnaby that is already running some co-processing. So it's a different kind of method of blending fuels. And then one heading to Quebec, and another which will be produced in another facility which will be based out of Newfoundland. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of renewable diesel facilities across the country. So that's kind of an indicator of where the market's going to go.
So what did the attendees at the conference? What are they making of renewable diesel? What's sort of the buzz there going forward?
Well, some people were wondering if it was just going to be like if renewable diesel would overshadow canola's use for food and for feed for animals, but that's not going to be the case. Renewable diesel is still going to be the third use for canola. And basically, there's a lot of opportunity for expansion of acres or for creating new varieties of canola with an additional oil content. So I think, people are just excited by the opportunities they see in canola.
Now, of course, the other thing with the widespread use of renewable fuels or any sort of biofuels for that matter as well, it also depends on the hand of government in mandating that use. Now, I know that this was a topic of some discussion there as well. What kinds of roles did the folks at this conference see government policies playing in the canola industry going forward?
I don't know if it's so much as it's for the canola industry, just as so much as for the fuel industry and mandates that are set by governments. So mandates in Canada and the United States will really affect what happens in fuel standards in the next few years. So there are mandates attached to low carbon fuel standards, but the mandates that will be important that are those that will require that fossil fuels like diesel needs to reduce carbon intensity by an amount. And renewable diesel, like a diesel like used with canola, reduces greenhouse gas emissions or it reduces a carbon footprint by 90%. So there is a lot of potential there by using biofuels to reduce a carbon footprint. So I think like federal clean fuel regulation and provincial low carbon fuel standards, they will really set the drivers for what's going to happen in biofuels.
Okay. Well, it sounds like folks in the industry have a lot to say about just sort of the status of it going forward. Now, what about farmers themselves? I mean, did they were farmers themselves out in full force at this conference, or?
Actually, there weren't a lot of farmers that attended this conference. It was more industry people, but there were farmers that were there who were, for example, I know some farmers who sit on the research boards of some of the provincial organizations. So they were there from a research standpoint. But the one day that farmers did show up, there was a panel on precision agriculture. And so a group of 3 farmers from Saskatchewan came to talk about the precision agriculture that they're using on their farms.
Oh, that's exciting. What did they have to say on the matter?
One was using robotics to check his rows, which was kind of interesting, and another was using optical spot spray. Another woman was talking about how she uses a lot of mapping because around the farm where they're farming in areas that are really rocky. So they need to map where the rocks are so that when they're going over things with a header or just going over the area that they aren't running into rocks. So I found this kind of interesting, and it was just there's basically 2 reasons why farmers are using these kind of technological developments on their farm. And those reasons are time and efficiency. And well, there's actually a few more reasons. There's also money, economic, and just cutting down on the labor. And also just environmental impacts too, by not spraying in places that don't need it or that kind of thing. Like just a wide variety of what reasons why people are using this kind of precision agriculture technology.
And now, just to get back to what you mentioned about environmental concerns for a second, you did mention before that there was some discussion there about sort of adaptation of canola production in the face of climate change. What's sort of the future going forward there?
I would say that 4R was discussed a lot. I can't remember all that 4R stands for. Is like right way, right place, right time, right method, or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Right. So yeah, they were discussing the 4R method. They're really expecting and hoping that more people pick it up. I also know that there's the on-farm climate action funds, which are distributed differently per province. And those will be something that people can use to just kind of check out their fertilizer use. I know a lot of people, like just having from my regular work, having talked to people are looking at ways to cut costs, which in turn will also in some ways will also cut emissions too, just depending on the method used. So there's a whole bunch of things that people are thinking about.
And lastly, we do hear a lot about the value and the price of canola these days. I mean, last I looked just a few minutes ago, I mean, ICE January canola was up over like $870 a ton. But with the cost of production being what they are, though, a lot of farmers these past few years are saying that these are the most expensive crops they've ever produced. I mean, just looking at even with the advancements that we've been talking about here, and the demand that we've been talking about here. I mean, is the impetus still there from what you could tell to keep canola production at really at a respectable level?
Well, I guess there's kind of a biased crowd since it was Canola Week, so people are really thinking that that there's a lot of good stuff going for canola now. That there is a bright future in canola, and a lot of reasons to continue with it, and that there are possibly good times ahead with canola. I don't have a crystal ball, but it sounds like there is going to be some interesting markets out there for canola. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it sounds like it was definitely an exciting week, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing more of your coverage from this in the weeks ahead in Alberta Farmer and in our other pubs. Alexis, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Alexis Kinlan is a reporter for Alberta Farmer Express in Edmonton, and you're listening to Between the Rows. I'm your host this week, Dave Bedard.
So
if you've been following the commodity charts in the past few weeks, you'll have noticed a kind of a mini drama going on in canola. Now, I say mini not to minimize whatever's going on. It's because there is a whole lot of volatility going on in the past few weeks, but sort of within a rather limited margin or within a limited range of motion. And here to talk us through that, we have Phil Franz Workington from Glacier Markets Farm. Phil, hi, and welcome back to Between the Rows.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
So it's been a little while since we've had a chance to chat about canola markets and canola futures on this show. Now, if we go back to a couple, 3 weeks ago, now we see canola over the period of about 8 days drop down from about near $900 a ton down to near $810. Then in fits and starts, it's been climbing back up since then. I guess if we start with the drop, what's the perception of what happened there?
Yeah, I guess it was maybe evening of positions would be one way to put it. Basically, canola had gotten very expensive relative to its relative to other competing oilseed markets. So it was due for a correction lower in that way. But so it was a lot of so while canola was going down, soy oil was doing other stuff, and it was very a lot of adjusting of positions and back and forth, and kind of it's not quite the year end, but year end positioning. But yeah, like you said, it is. It fell to $800. It's back now. Looking at the March contract around $850, $860 when we're talking now. But so $800 to $900. That's been the range going back to July. Basically, it's been kind of chopping around in there. So it has been seeing these large price moves as speculators either come in on the one side or go out, and they're basically playing the market and going back and forth and as they square positions one way or the other and play it against the soy markets and other oilseed markets. But overall it's there's been the volatility, but if you look at it with a wider lens, it's a fairly straight range bound trade. That range is $100, but it is in a range when we're talking $900. That's not that large of a percentage move that we're seeing.
Now, were there any outside events that sort of led it to get that support up from down off that low near the $800 mark? I'm just looking at I've just got the chart up right now, and it's March canola right now is at 876.30. This is Tuesday afternoon, by the way, as we speak. So just for those for those just tuning in, so to speak.
Yeah. That's the January at 876, and the March is 858. And the January and the March, we're only a few weeks away from January, so it's getting to that point where things often will get weird in the front month as people try to exit and get out of it before it expires. We're not quite there yet, but with the holidays and all that, that could lead to some excitement there. But yeah, overall they're both still fairly range bound, and as far as bouncing off of that low, it was just probably a matter of was it 8 days in a low of losses? What goes up must come down, and what goes down must bounce back up. I suppose the adage held true in this case. I'm looking back. I don't think there was anything like really particular that stands out as far as at that point. I'm just looking at the chart here in front of me. So that kind of turnaround came in late November, and now we've been trending higher for most of December. There's a few, a couple days up, 1 day down, and then we go back up. But the trend is it's moving higher overall. Part of that is, it's seasonally this time of year. Selling often sort of fades away a bit, and it'll pick back up after the holidays. And so then we could see it dip back down as we hold in this sideways range. But yeah, a lot of the it doesn't line up with the chart, but in recent weeks we've had Statistics Canada came out with their official production number. They pegged it, the crop, about 1 million tons lower than had the original thoughts. So, 1 million less tons of canola around. That tightens the balance sheet up, and it would be a supportive influence. So that's one thing.
And the other thing to keep in mind there too, it was interesting with the StatsCan report. That was the first one of this. Been the first one in a few months that was also survey based as opposed to based on satellite on computer modeling and satellite imagery. Am I right?
Yeah, everything else this year has been their satellite model based guesses, for lack of a better word. They've been working on that, introducing the satellite models before the pandemic, but with the pandemic, that really seemed to sort of heighten their movements, doing fewer surveys and relying on the models a bit more. So the jury's still out amongst traders how much stock to put into those the non-surveyed numbers. But yeah, this was the first real official. They surveyed farmers and got their numbers. So there's still adjustments could still be coming down the line. Yeah, it's interesting. The USDA put out their own world supply demand numbers just a couple days ago, and they're still pegging the canola crop, Canada's crop, at 19 million tons, whereas StatsCan has it at around 18.1 million. So they're not really trusting the survey data either there in the States. So it'll be interesting where it plays out how much of a crop we actually have in the end. But in any case, there's a lot more to go around than last year. But it's only a certain. The sense seems to be that the domestic crush will, go full steam ahead. The crush margins are still very wide and very profitable for them, and the where exports ends up will depend on how much available surplus we have to export.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of domestic crush and whatnot, when we also on this show this week, we've been talking to Alexis Kinlan from Alberta Farmer. She just got back from Canola Week. There was some discussion about renewable diesel markets and new plants being built here in Canada to use canola and soybeans for that market. The one thing I have noticed is just that with oil seasons, there seems to be a fair amount of it seems to be much more closely tied to the fortunes of crude oil than it used to be. Is it fair to say that canola is linked in on that, or is there still some independence there from what crude oil is doing?
Well, there's definitely a correlation between the crude oil and the vegetable oil markets. Canola has its whole healthy oil, vegetable oil. There's, that market that's not going away. So the oil biodiesel basically provides a floor for the market. So yes, what crude oil is doing, and in turn biofuels, definitely has an influence on the canola market. Just a week or two ago, there was news out of the U.S. on their biodiesel fuel requirements, and basically the sentiment was whatever they were. I forget the exact wording, but the plans they had on biodiesel weren't going to use as much soy oil as originally thought. So that caused a big drop in soy oil, and then usually whatever happens in soy oil is very even more closely related to the canola market than the crude oil market. So that was did weigh on canola prices a bit, but at the same time, that also came as when we were doing the opposite of them for a while as well. So it's not always a one-to-one, but it is. There's definitely a relationship there and something to keep an eye on. And yeah, in the Western Canada, there's been a lot of talk in the relatively recently on all these new plants that are going to be coming up for creating renewable fuels. And yeah, where the numbers are now, it looks profitable. So
Yeah. So what's it going to take? Looking at the getting back to the question of the canola values and the current range that they're stuck in, what's it going to take for canola to sort of break out of this $800 to $900 range either way? I mean, or should we even be complaining if it doesn't?
It doesn't. You don't have to go back very far when $800 to $900 would be historically high and would be crazy prices for canola, right? I think right now, that as far as the canola market itself is concerned, that seems to be a comfortable range. It's been there for since July, so 5-6 months by now. So it'll take something outside of the own canola specific story. So, whether that's something with China or something with the war in Ukraine or some other catalyst. South America is growing their next crops now, so weather concerns down there are something to keep an eye on. There's drought in Argentina, and Brazil is relatively good shape right now, but things could always change. So
I gather Australia was just had some fairly good data, some fairly healthy data as far as the size of their canola crop this year as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they're predicting a record large canola crop, so that's good for them. Bearish for prices as far as Canadian prices go. They're a lot closer to the Asian markets, many Asian markets compared to us. So a good chunk of their larger canola crop will be competing with ours on the export markets. So that's I don't think they've harvested it. The weather there can be crazy sometimes, so anything could happen. But they're looking at they're calling it a record large canola crop, a big wheat crop too. So that would be definitely something overhanging things. One reason why a return to $800 would be more likely than a test of $900. But at the same time, right now we're moving closer to the 900 and the 800. So
one way or the other, but the balance of probabilities favors a gradual downward motion eventually.
Eventually, yeah, I would think so. Mm-hmm. But don't hold me to that, because there's many outside influences that could provide a catalyst that would easily take it back up again.
And we'll certainly be.
It's not that. Sorry, it's not that long ago we were at $1,000. So but that was back in the last spring when we're still dealing with the drought crop of the previous year.
Mm-hmm. And we'll certainly be watching out for those catalysts as the next few weeks and months go by. Phil, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Phil Franz-Workington is a reporter for Glacier Markets Farm in Winnipeg. You're listening to Between the Rows. I'm your host this week, Dave Bedard. Well, that's our time for now, but we'll be back here next week with your pre-holiday entertainments. I'd like to thank our guests, Alexis Kinlan and Phil Franz-Workington, and of course you for loading up this episode of Between the Rows. I've been your host this week, Dave Bedard. Thanks for listening.
Save money, make money with AGI Nico dryers. AGI Nico mixed flow screenless dryers provide 1 to 2 pounds heavier test weight per bushel and require less maintenance than screen dryers. Stainless steel fuel trains mean no rust or corrosion to worry about. AGI Nico Dryer Manager puts remote management and monitoring in your hands. And with 30% in fuel savings, you'll save on every load. That's money in your pocket. Visit aggrowth.com/Nico for more info. That's aggrowth.com/Nico.